Hello, hello. This is David, and welcome to my channel. You may know me as ChessNerdBird. Well, today I will be doing a recap of the round one game from the 2021 Charlotte Open, where I won the under 1900 section and gained over 100 rating points to bring my USCF rating to 1843. After 10 years of playing in chess tournaments, this is my first time ever winning. I had placed second a couple of times, both at the 2016 Carolinas Classic and the 2019 North Carolina Open. I didn't know I was going to play in this tournament until about a week before it started, so I really did not do anything to prepare. In fact, I had played at the North Carolina Open in the under 1900 section just a few weeks before, scored 2.5 out of 4, and did not play the final two rounds. Therefore, I had no expectations to do well in this tournament, much less win the whole thing. But for the first time in a long time, I was simply excited to play chess. And that's it. And I believe this mental shift was key in how I ended up performing. But enough rambling from me. Let's get into the first game. So already I'm faced with a decision here. Should I continue playing my Dutch defense, which honestly has a pretty good score for me over the board? Not so much online, but over the board in tournament chess, I actually have a pretty good score with the Dutch defense. But I've been kicking around the idea to go back to playing the King's Indian defense, which I had played when I first started tournament chess 10 years ago. In fact, one of my King's Indian defense games had been published in Chess Life. But I decided that if I didn't play the King's Indian defense this tournament, then I guess I was never really going to play it. And so even though looking at only 4 lines before the tournament in the King's Indian defense, I decided, why not? Since I'm here to just play chess and try and learn from this tournament, I have nothing to lose if I get a bad position. So my opponent plays normal stuff here, g6. And okay. Already my opponent takes me out of my book knowledge here. In fact, I had just been looking at lines against the classical setup, but nothing against this f3 line. So anyway, I castled, which I knew couldn't be a bad move. Bishop e3, and with my limited knowledge, I'm only aware of these f5, e5, and c5 breaks. Like, I understand those are the breaks in the positions that we're trying to get as black. But honestly, I'm not sure which one to play in this particular position. Not saying in this moment, but with the structure that white has, I'm not sure which one I'm aiming for. So instead, I just go with a move that I had looked at in the lines that I had looked at before the tournament. Okay, my opponent plays bishop d3. Seems logical enough to me. And now I play c5. Because I decided that if white pushes their pawn to d5, then I'm happy that my bishop opens up. The same thing if they take. And so I figured it couldn't be a bad move. And my opponent does push to d5. And so here already, yeah, I'm kind of struggling to figure out what the plan is. So I wanted to go 95 right away, but I thought after f4, the knight, if I were to go forward with g4 and then bishop d2, I'm not sure what's going to happen after h3. Because if I go back to h6, then g4 is coming, and I wasn't, yeah, I just wasn't happy with this idea. Obviously, it's my move here, so maybe I could just go ahead and maybe pull this knight back, and then that way when h3 comes, I can actually go to f6 with the g knight. But yeah, I just wasn't too happy with this position here over the board. So anyway, I played 98 already. I don't know what to do here, to be honest. Yeah, my idea really was simply to maybe reroute to c7 and maybe play for b5 with a6, b5 with the knight on c7, but even that I'm not sure about. I don't think I'm ever really playing f5 in these positions, so yeah, honestly, I wasn't sure. Even with this e6, I just wasn't sure with this super weakness. Like if the bishop comes back, yeah, I mean, maybe I'm playing moves like this, and I'm bringing the knights around to help guard this d6 pawn, but I just didn't like having a weak pawn the whole time. And while it may not objectively be bad, I guess, yeah, I wasn't a fan of trying to defend a weakness so early in the game. So okay, so 98, just making a move, forcing my opponents to figure out their plan. And so after queen d2, oh, okay, now I'm happy to play knight e5. Because if f4 comes now, I get knight g4. Because I'm never going to take the d3 bishop. I want this one. And so this way, this bishop doesn't have any competitor for the dark squares as far as bishops go. And yeah, so I was happy to see queen d2. And now, after castling queenside, this move really shocked me. I didn't think it was a good move for my opponent. It wasn't a move I ever really considered my opponent to play, simply because it just doesn't look right in this position. Yeah, like my pawns are all pointing to the queen side, so I don't, yeah, I really did not believe that that was the move to be played. So I go for the b5, wanting to rip open the files leading to the white king. My opponent took with the pawn, and to be honest, I was not expecting this move at all, since it just seems to accelerate my plans. Of course, I didn't follow it up well, but I was expecting knight takes b5, where I was going to go bishop d7, and if they try and lock in the knight, well, then I was just going to take and then play a6. And, well, I was just going to be happy here. Because I'm going to get the A file, and yeah, like my pieces are just going to flood into the position. This bishop's going to have a nice square. Once I take here, I've got the open A file. I can bring my queen in over. I can bring this knight over, get this rook in. It's just, it seems to play itself. I'm sure I'll have to watch out for some tactical things from my opponent, but yeah, I felt like this was going to be fine. But when my opponent took with the pawn, I should have continued in the same fashion with a6. And why I did not, I really can't answer that. Yeah, instead, I played c4. With the idea that I was going to, yeah, basically just gang up on this pawn and win it, and this bishop wouldn't be able to protect it. But honestly, giving this bishop a lot more scope into the game, especially the d4 square, was not a good idea. So yeah, so after bishop e2 and queen a5, I just continued my plan to corral the b5 pawn. And then also, okay, I tied down the knight a little bit, forcing the king to scoot over. And now after bishop d7, g4, okay, so my plan to get the b5 pawn, to get the open b file. So far, my plan has worked. And after bishop d4, I wanted to go knight d3 here, but it ends up losing a pawn. So after knight d3, bishop takes, pawn takes, and we end up trading down to this. White's got the 2-on-1 majority. They're up a pawn, and yeah, I was not happy with that position. So, which is why I played rook b8. And you'll see why rook b8 matters here in a moment. So after my opponent played f4, allowing me to go into knight d3, my opponent takes on g7. I took back with the knight simply for the idea that I didn't want to allow a queen check. And after takes, now we see the reason why rook b8 is played. If the queen takes the pawn, well, then we give checkmate. So this is why rook b8 was played. And so my opponent played knight f3, and honestly, I thought the plan for my opponent was to go knight e1 to win this pawn. So I thought of a way to stop that. And I played rook f to c8. The reason being, if knight e1 now, then we get rook c2. And if knight takes, then we get our checkmate. So again, rook b8 was a very important move there. And obviously, if the queen takes, well, then we just take the queen, and we're completely winning there. So that was good. But instead, my opponent played this knight d4 move. And to be honest, I did not see that as an option at all. So I just went queen b6. And once the knight comes into c6, my position is just immensely under pressure right now. And yeah, I was not very very happy with this. But okay, my opponent played h4. And so the wall pawns on the 4th rank may look scary, but I wasn't nervous here. As someone who loves to attack and go for kingside attacks, those pawns are just way too slow. They're not going to break through. And so, especially once I found a way to get my worst place piece back into the game with knight e6. Okay, the idea is that yes, I can take on f4, possibly. Because again, the queen can never leave because the queen is tied down to guarding this b2 pawn and stopping checkmate. So okay, I could threaten that. But of course, with opening up the f-file, that may not be something I do. And so also looking at knight c5 or maybe even knight d8, just asking what they're going to do with this annoying piece on c6. But really, yeah, knight c5, tickling this square, maybe going to knight a4, ganging up on the b2 pawn. So just really trying to get into the game. And then obviously if my opponent takes, well, I was quite happy here. And I didn't really consider that they would take the knight, simply because it allows me to take their knight. And then after trading pawns, okay, I'm happy here. They still can't take the pawn on c3. My opponent offers a rook trade, but I'm not just going to trade down. So I figured, well, if you want to trade rooks, then you're going to help me move a pawn over to the c-file, which my opponent does. And now after f5, I just play c4. So now my passed pawn is protected. And I'm quite happy with my position here. I don't feel like... yeah, I just feel like I'm comfortable here. I'm not worried about getting checkmated. I do have to be a little careful though. After queen c3, I play queen e6. Just attacking all the pawns, guarding my c4 pawn. Okay, going king g8. Just staying safe. The rook obviously guards all the pawns there. That's fine. I played rook c7. Just wanting to guard my c4 pawn so my queen was freed up to do other things. Now after h5, I thought about going g5 here, forcing the rook up, taking the e4 pawn. But after this, I thought I was okay. But I really did not like leaving white with these two connected pawns. It just felt like that might be a little bit too much. And since I couldn't calculate out all the variations at the end, I just felt like it was better to not go into that. So instead, I took their pawn, and they played rook f5. I thought if they took on h5, then I would just go queen h3. I could win that pawn. I could give check, and I thought I was okay here too. Okay, so after rook f5, I really felt like I was okay, especially once I saw the lines here after king e6. if queen g6, I was going to take. And I was completely happy with this turn of events here. Instead, my opponent played queen g8, and this was a move that I had looked at over the board. But of course, I think I missed some ideas here with perpetuals. Okay, I have to go king e6. If I go king c6, well, there's this move. Yeah, rook b8. Well, honestly, I just thought. Yeah, honestly, I just saw that white would win my queen. Okay, I do have this, but then after, yeah, queen c8, king d6. Really, we just end up in a perpetual here. Queen c5, and all this looked a little bit too much. So yeah, so I had to go back to king e6, admit that I did the wrong move, and go king d7. And honestly, I thought here my opponent should just go queen d5, rook takes d5. And okay, it's yeah, I guess I'm still winning here, so I was happy with that. But instead they went rook d5, and here I definitely felt like I was better, especially after these trades. And yeah, I'm just completely winning here. There's no yeah, there's nothing else here. I thought about going king d4, but I just didn't want to allow white to take both pawns with checks, even though I felt like I was still winning. So instead I just allowed one pawn to be taken, and now I just had to avoid all the checks. So that's where I'm going, and now white is out of checks. They're also out of time, basically. But on move 50, they had 1 minute left. So okay, here we go. We promote, and then we give checkmate. So overall, I thought a very decent game. I definitely missed some opportunities with the in this moment to play a6, continuing with the idea. But yeah, other than that, I felt like I played pretty well, especially for not knowing the opening. And yeah, a nice little finish here with the path pawn getting home. So that was round 1. And we'll be doing round 2 tomorrow. And so make sure you subscribe to the channel so you get notified when and click the bell to make sure you get notified when that video gets uploaded and posted for round 2. The other games are definitely a lot more interesting, I think, than this first round. I don't think this game was very interesting, but the next games definitely are very interesting. In fact, in the next game, there were 33 moves played in the game, and 24 of them were with knights. So make sure you definitely tune in to round 2 to see how 33 moves were played, and 24 of them were with a knight. So thanks for watching. Again, this is David, ChessNerdBird, signing off. Have a good rest of your day.